Hello and welcome to this presentation. So why are we looking at business models for green infrastructure? Well, it's because while the benefits of green infrastructure are well known, finding the funding necessary for its development is difficult. And even if that funding is available, it's often for capital rather than revenue. This brings the risk that things will get built but not maintained. So our research has been looking at how to improve matters. And we started with the idea that potential stakeholders for green infrastructure are more likely to provide the necessary revenue funding if they can see that the value created will accrue directly to them. And so this got us looking at two things. Firstly, how to conceptualize green infrastructure as a business, and secondly, how to create business models or narratives of value generation and capture to support those businesses. Now, what we found is that business model creation is a complex problem, involves a lot of uncertainty, and there's no right answer. So our research has been looking at how to cope with this complexity through the application of soft systems methodology and an elaboration of that, the accrue cities methodology. And we've been testing this approach with a case study based on a piece of green infrastructure in Birmingham called, interestingly, The Lost World. So in this presentation, I'm going to describe the research that we've done to conceptualize the Lost World as a business, to identify the potential value streams that it might create, and to explore how these can be brought together to deliver the Lost World as a going concern. So I'm going to describe the Lost World and introduce some of the potential stakeholders. I'm going to describe briefly soft systems methodology and the accrue cities methodology. I'm going to provide an overview of a workshop that we held with potential stakeholders back in October 2019 to identify and integrate value streams. And I'm going to talk about our findings, conclusions, and future research. But without more ado, let's talk about the Lost World and its potential stakeholders. As I've already mentioned, the Lost World is in Birmingham, the UK's second city. It's situated approximately 4 kilometres southeast of the city centre, and it's in an area of mixed development with housing, retail, industry and schools. The site itself is 75 acres, owned by Birmingham City Council, but leased to a local charity called the Accrue Trust. An offshoot of the trust, called Accrue Adventure, uses approximately 25% of the site for organised leisure activities. There is a small dry ski slope and a climbing wall, among other things. But the rest of the land has largely been left to its own devices. A cycle track runs through the site roughly northeast to southwest, but the land on either side is very overgrown, and fear of antisocial behaviour doesn't encourage use. Littering is a problem, and in places Japanese knotweed has taken hold. Also northeast to southwest is the River Cole and its valley. Running roughly northwest to southeast is the Grand Union Canal, which cuts the site roughly in half. Parallel to the canal is the Birmingham to London Marylebone Railway, with a station at Tyseley and an engineering works close by. On the northern flank is the A45 Birmingham to Coventry dual carriageway. A number of stakeholders have been identified on and around the Lost World who have expressed an interest in participating in business model development. As just mentioned, there's Accrue Trust. Then there's the parish of Smallheath, which includes roughly half of the Lost World within its boundary. At the east end of the site is St Cyprian's Church and the Memorial Church Hall. To the northeast is Asda, who have a large supermarket serving the local residential area. And to the south is Vintage Trains, an operator of heritage railway tours and a builder and maintainer of heritage locomotives and rolling stock. The Canal and River Trust look after the Grand Union Canal, and the Environment Agency have responsibility for the River Cole Valley. Surrounding the Lost World are a number of schools, and sandwiched between the Lost World and the Grand Union Canal is Webster and Horsfall, manufacturers of wire products on this site since 1848, and developers of Tyseley Energy Park, with its cluster of green energy technologies and the Birmingham Energy Innovation Centre. Finally, just to the west of Tyseley Energy Park is Veolia, who operate Birmingham's Energy from Waste plant. These aren't all of the potential stakeholders by any means, but already the diagram shows an interesting cluster of organisations that could draw value from the lost world and therefore might be willing to contribute towards its long-term maintenance. Moving on to the academic grounding of our research, we're exploring the use of soft systems methodology and an elaboration of that, the accrue cities methodology, to help us develop business models. Soft systems methodology was originally developed for business problem solving, and the diagram shows the process at a high level. Things start top left with a whole system's understanding of the situation of concern, which in our case is how to create business models for the lost world. This provides the foundation from which to look for a range of possible solutions. These are then assessed against the existing situation for their systemic desirability and cultural feasibility. Finally, if they pass that test, they can be implemented and a new real-world situation is created. The accrue cities methodology can be viewed as an elaboration of the soft systems methodology. Although the cities methodology was devised for city-scale initiatives, we have been exploring its use at smaller scales, like the lost world. Essentially, the cities methodology is an unpacking of the soft systems methodology into a 17-step process in which business models feature as a core output. Of those 17 steps, the 9 most relevant to the lost world are shown here. Steps 1 to 4 helped us to understand the situation of concern and were carried out before the workshop by Sandy Robertson of the Haymills Foundation Trust and Zafar Iqbal, local councillor for the Tyseley and Haymills ward. Step 5 was the driver for the workshop, which set out to understand how each stakeholder viewed the lost world, what value they thought it could deliver to their own organisations, and how the two might lead to ideas for integrated business models for the lost world. Steps 6 to 9 will be the subject of future research and concern actions to realise business model opportunities. Looking at the workshop in more detail, 24 people attended from a variety of organisations. They were divided into 4 equally sized groups with a good mix of stakeholders in each one. The first session looked at how to conceptualise the lost world as a business. The stakeholders were asked to identify concepts that appeal to them from the point of view of their own organisations. Analysis of the results after the workshop by the research team identified 4 broad areas that could act as a foundation for business model development. These were a community building acting as a hub, green spaces along the Grand Union Canal and River Cole, an area of industry, technology and scientific research, and a central nature and environmental resource. In the second workshop session, the groups were asked to think about the value that might accrue to their own organisations from the lost world. Again, post-workshop, the research team analysed the results for commonality and found 25 broad, interlinked value streams. The top 10 of these were: number 1, social cohesion and increased pride in the area, a vital step in re-energising the community. Number 2, improved health and well-being, leading perhaps to reduced healthcare costs. Number 3, creation of a community hub, maybe supporting education and again reducing healthcare costs. Increased visitor numbers, bringing more money into the area. Number 5, research and innovation hub, linking through to new jobs and training. Number 6, reduced antisocial behaviour and crime, linked to improved health, community cohesion and increased visitor numbers. Number 7, improved landscaping and aesthetics, helping to boost visitor numbers. Number 8, improved employment and training, potentially tied into many of these opportunities. Number 9, green transport routes as an important way of increasing visitor numbers and linking into plans for the East Birmingham corridor. And number 10, broad education, supporting the research hub and other value opportunities. The third session sought to bring together the work from the first 2 sessions to create business ideas. 4 emerged as prime contenders. First, a community hub based on the church to provide a focal point into which other stakeholders could connect and generate value. The second was to build on the existing green energy and research hub. The green growth already experienced there was seen as a potential catalyst for growth in the wider area. The third was to build on existing plans to improve well-being along the Grand Union Canal and the River Cole. And the fourth, probably the most ambitious, envisaged a heritage park, bringing together historical assets such as the Grand Union Canal and vintage trains with the area's new cutting-edge technologies on Tyseley Energy Park. So the final plenary session looked at how to take these ideas forward. And it highlighted this crucial barrier. While stakeholders can identify their own opportunities for value generation, working together to create supporting business models seems to be much more difficult. Now, this may be due to an unwillingness on the part of individual stakeholders to take a lead for a variety of reasons. For example, insufficient resource to allow them to gather together a group of partners, or insufficient value accruing to them to make it worth their while taking on the risks involved. So how can we get round this? Well, our research has been exploring a potential role for social entrepreneurs who develop, fund and implement solutions to social, cultural and environmental needs. Unlike profit-driven entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs run self-sustaining not-for-profit businesses, or where a profit goal is involved, blend it with wider societal benefits. So how can social entrepreneurs help the lost world? We've been exploring a potential intermediation role, filling the already identified resource gap and taking on ownership of business model development and maintenance. As part of preparing a brief for social entrepreneurs to take on this role, we've been asking stakeholders a new set of questions that will shine light on issues of joint working, leadership and governance. Those questions include: how should future collaboration opportunities be identified? Is it simply a case of serendipity, or is something more organised required? What sort of governance arrangements can you envisage requiring to support collaboration with the lost world? And what would the lost world have to do in order to fit with your brand? What sort of flexibility would you allow around your brand to accommodate the lost world? Answers to these questions will help us prepare a business model proposal for the lost world, which can be pitched to the stakeholders. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge the fantastic support that our research has received from Sandy Robertson at the Hay Mills Foundation Trust, Zafar Iqbal, Councillor for the Tyseley and Hay Mills Ward, and David Horsfall at Webster and Horsfall Holdings. Thank you to you three and all of the other stakeholders who contributed. And thank you for listening.